Before we get started, from now until May 22nd, I am running a giveaway for a free signed copy of The Littlest Elephant by Katherine Applegate. Follow the link in the description and subscribe there to enter. Must be within the United States to be eligible to win. And thank you for listening. Welcome to the Book Fair Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have more on last week's report from PEN America, a growing push for a new category distinction separating books for teens and adults, and a profile on one young person who helped fight to save their library. This Friday, we will have an interview with Alexandria Sepulveda, Education and Outreach Manager for Magic Theater. Make sure to follow the podcast to hear more from educators and authors. Let's begin this week by looking at new releases, starting with Bear for a Day by Corey R. Tabor. In a classroom presentation turned picture book from Tabor, one creative storyteller, a pale-skinned student ID'd by their notebook as Corey Tabor, delivers a subversively comedic report on living for one day as a bear. Rather than offering facts pertaining to the natural world, though, the presenter narrates a surprisingly human-like day in the life. The furry brown mammal wears pajamas and clothes and brushes teeth for 120 Mississippis, while incorporating fanciful elements such as the bear's befriending a troublemaking moose. Classmates interject with incredulous protests. Bears don't wear clothes. But the undaunted child persists in describing an increasingly elaborate day featuring motorcycle rides, lunch at a Panda Run Mall restaurant, the appearance of a suit-wearing elephant, and a dramatic hot air balloon escape. Digitally finished artwork depicts each scenario with instructional seriousness throughout panels rendered in the creator's signature style. And a deadpan delivery gradually transforms the skeptical spectators into enthusiastic participants. At report's end, they demand more details, then beg for an encore with more elephants. It's a read for every kid who's turned homework into performance art, and the audience that cheers them on. This book is recommended for ages 4 to 8. Next is The Shrew Detective, The Case of the Pilfered Pearls, by Margi Preus, with illustrations by Junyi Wu. Preus channels animal sleuth classics such as The Great Mouse Detective in a radiant series opener. Pygmy shrew Minerva usually reserves her investigative prowess for cases close to her woodland abode, until her cousin Tenacity summons her to a human house, hopeful that the detective can help prevent potential animal murder. The homeowner believes that mice have stolen her pearl necklace, and if it's not recovered, she'll hire an exterminator to fumigate the building. Donning her spectacles and deerstalker hat and tapping into her vast vocabulary, learned from reading the dictionary definitions that wallpaper her quaint den, shrewd shrew Minerva interviews acrobatic squirrels, a bumbling dog, and other denizens in and around the house as she seeks out suspects and evidence. To find the pearls before it's too late. The unique biology of the novel's adorable, sprawling animalian cast proves vital to plot momentum, as when Minerva uses echolocation to explore too dark surroundings, and a chipmunk's large mouth offers the key to reclaiming the pearls. Shaded graphite illustrations by Wu, reminiscent of Sid Hoff's, are sprinkled with clues, allowing readers to join in as Minerva's investigation encounters household perils punctuated by her many meals. Shrews will die if they don't eat every hour. Human characters present as white, animal facts conclude, and this book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is A Wish with Wings by Sarah Guillory. A 12-year-old rails against others' expectations and revels in her budding anatomy in this evocative novel from Guillory. Evan Callias would happily spend her days outside, fishing, staging mud fights, and roaming the swamps of Little John Island, Louisiana. But her fastidious mother and forbidding aunt expect her to stay both clean and indoors. During one of her nature wanderings, Evan discovers an unattended egg that she believes belongs to a whooping crane, which she sneaks home. She also notices unsettling bubbles rising from the swampland, owned by the mining company that employs her father. When her dad is trapped by a cave-in, Evan is racked with guilt over what she saw and failed to report, and begins withdrawing emotionally from her best friend, whose father supervises the mine. As Evan wrestles with questions of responsibility, loyalty, and courage, she pins her hopes for the future on the fragile egg in her care. Lush prose and emotionally grounded storytelling render Evan's moral awakening both convincing and affecting, immersing readers in a vividly realized setting that celebrates the natural world and one's place in it. Main characters read as white, and this book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is Landing in Place by Sherine Hamday and illustrated by Myra L. Mir. Hamday and El Mir deliver a moving graphic novel that deftly explores a college student's experience, charting her own path while navigating a turbulent transitional period. Egyptian-American artist Anissa, living in the U.S., struggles under the weight of her immigrant parents' expectations. Though she has no desire to become a doctor, Anissa dutifully enrolls in a combined undergrad medical program. After a rough first semester, during which Anissa feels out of place and fails a class for the first time, she seizes the chance to spend a semester in Cairo with her beloved grandfather. While her family members cite myriad social and political reasons for not donning a headscarf in Cairo, Anissa opts to wear one, hoping it will help her blend in. Over the course of her stay, she finds that the garment soothes some of her appearance-related anxiety and offers other avenues for her to deepen her relationship to Islam. Additionally, the student begins an internship with a cartoonist at an Egyptian newspaper, an opportunity that allows her to hone her artistic storytelling. Layered explorations of complex intersections of identity, religion, and politics are accompanied by emotive black and white artwork conveyed via impressively dynamic layouts with elaborate and immersive scenery. An author's note and contextualizing information conclude, and this book is recommended for ages 12 and up. Next is This Could All Go Bad by Spencer Hall. An anxious teen resolves to confront his fears in this uproarious novel from Hall. On the night before his 8th grade graduation, 14-year-old Jensen Chapman's best friend Malik and Cooper lure him out for what they call a night of adventure. Several of their classmates, including Jensen's crush Leslie, have challenged the trio to a series of dares that promise bragging rights for the victors. Throughout the evening, Jensen, Malik, and Cooper attempt increasingly wild dares that test Jensen's bravery and determination. But when he learns that his friends have been hiding potentially life-altering news from him, it may irrevocably alter their relationship. By turns sincere and humorous, this nocturnal romp is both a frenetic comedy and an ode to friendship as the protagonists reckon with rapidly approaching changes and panic-inducing transition into high school. As the teens careen from one challenge to the next, Hall inserts chaotic joviality and dynamic energy into a story about one teen's attempt to do it scared and his supporters' promise to be there whether things go right or wrong. While Jensen takes center stage, Cooper and Malik have their moments of glory as well, rounding out and adding texture to a magnetic, racially diverse ensemble cast. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. The final title this week is Queerleaders by Olivia A. Cole and Ashley Woodfolk. In the tradition of Bring It On, previous collaborators Cole and Woodfolk deliver a spirited sports romance that follows an out and proud all-queer cheer team as they navigate competition, conservative critics, and romance on the road to nationals. Starting over after expulsion from her previous school, Kendall Hayes finds herself thrust into Oak Haven High's cheer program just as Hornets team captain Davy Cathy determines that the squad must score a championship title. After a scorned prospect for the Hornets accuses them of anti-straight bias, Davy refutes the claim by offering Kendall, whom Davy believes is straight, a spot on the team. The stakes escalate as sparks ignite between Davy and Kendall, who must keep their budding relationship a secret or risk school administration pulling the Hornets' funding over discrimination accusations. While the story at times buckles under the weight of jam-packed plotting and key conflicts surrounding funding battles, secret relationships, and team politics feel underdeveloped, fans of sports-centric love stories will appreciate the energetic cheer sequences, exuberant characters, celebratory atmosphere, and strong messaging about the importance of inclusivity and social advocacy. The cast is intersectionally diverse, and this book is recommended for ages 14 and up. That covers the new releases for this week. Next, we'll be taking a look at some news. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Fair podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at BookFairPod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Next, let's take a look at some news, starting with this year's report from PEN America. Last week, we covered PEN America's report on book bans in the United States. While we covered the rise of nonfiction titles removed from schools and libraries, there is more information in the annual report from PEN America. During the 2024 to 2025 school year, the organization recorded 3,743 unique titles banned across 23 states. PEN America's report analyzes banned books and the content that the titles have in common. The three topics found to be most prevalent in banned books are depictions or discussions of non-sexual violence, death or grief, and what PEN America lists as empowerment and self-esteem. The most banned topic, non-sexual violence, was found in over 2,000 titles, representing 57% of all books recorded in this report. One of the largest topics PEN America mentions in this report is themes of empowerment and self-esteem. Reading directly from the report, quote, "Books about empowerment and self-esteem are notable for encouraging readers to accept themselves and overcome challenges through plot lines that highlight the importance of support systems." End quote. Another section of this report covers other aspects of book bans, and that is the distinction between removing access to stories and erasing representation of people from public spaces. Of the 3,743 banned books, PEN America records that 44% were written by or featured people of color. This is explicitly looking at main characters. 39% were by or about LGBTQ+ people, and more specifically, nearly half of that amount or 19% of all titles, are by or about transgender or gender nonconforming people. A common reason given from advocates for censorship is the assertion that the titles removed from schools are pornographic. PEN America's assessment of titles written for young readers that are often cited as sexually explicit are simply informing young people about consent, bodily autonomy, and models of healthy relationships. This year's report shows a decrease in titles with sexual themes, representing only 34%, or 1,270 titles, down from 40%, or 1,680 from the previous year. PEN America's report points out that of all titles restricted, relocated, and banned, again, 3,743 titles, only 10%, or 377, of those titles contain depictions of sexual content on the page instead of references, implied, or off-page actions. There is still more to dive into from PEN America, and we can continue looking at this report next week. For now, I will simply note that advocating for the freedom to read is not arguing that all titles within these reports should be in schools. Of the titles that contain sexually explicit themes, there are undoubtedly instances of material that is not appropriate for certain libraries. One of the most commonly banned authors, Sarah J. Moss, has books that simply do not belong in elementary or middle school libraries, and I don't feel that that is a controversial statement. However, it is the systemic assault on authors and communities from marginalized groups that is frankly abhorrent. That the simple mention of queer and trans people is indoctrination is a failure to understand how identity and sexuality work, and implies that being of these groups is a negative thing. More importantly, having legislation from the state or federal level impose political or religious bias on library collections and limits freedom of speech, which includes access to information without government suppression. Next, let's take a look at a recent trend to introduce a new audience category to publishing. Reading directly from Publishers Weekly, quote, "When S.E. Hinton wrote The Outsiders, often considered the first modern YA novel, the category was rooted in teen experience and teen leadership," end quote. Today, young adult covers a broad scope of authors from diverse backgrounds. In the time between The Outsiders and today, the themes within YA have also matured, and readers have shifted from high school students to adults that drive the market. Today, young adult is not exclusively a teen category. However, there have been recent moves by publishers to introduce a new category that will cover the modern trends that have been seen in young adult while allowing the existing category to be reclaimed for teen readers. There have been 3 newly launched imprints focusing on this new distinction: Berkeley XO from Berkeley and Penguin Young Readers, Requited from Brown Books, and Scarlet Press from Simon & Schuster's. HarperCollins, through its imprint Morrow, has also been exploring new adult, though has not formed a dedicated subsidiary for the category. Tying into the previous story, I feel that bringing on this new split will help address book bans. I've stated on the Book Fair podcast before that young adult as a category is a misnomer. This story from Publishers Weekly and the push for new adult will separate books written for adults from a category historically targeting teens. This week saw a lot to cover outside the typical attacks on libraries and schools, and even though those stories weren't covered this week, we will still follow the trend of ending with good news. This story comes from the Salem Reporter out of Salem, Oregon. At only 7 years old, Zoe Harper was one of many who joined the Fund Our Libraries Now effort to speak out against proposed budget cuts to the Salem Public Library. Jim Shepke, leader of the community movement, asked Zoe's mother if she would be interested in speaking in front of the budget committee. On April 17, 2024, 7-year-old Zoe took the stand and said, quote, "My name is Zoe Harper. No more cuts to our library, please. I learned to read myself before kindergarten, and I love reading books. It's one of my favorite things to do. I just love this library. End quote. After Zoe spoke, along with more than a dozen other advocates, the Budget Committee approved a 5-year levy to fund the Salem Public Library. Shepke said, partially truncated for clarity, quote, Zoe was instrumental in that. If she hadn't done that, we might not have gotten everybody on board for the livability levy. End quote. Today, Zoe is 9 years old and is still involved in civic affairs, having testified during public meetings, encouraged voter turnout, and recently asked mayoral candidate Vanessa Nordyke questions on stage to help inform voters. She traces her activism to her first speech in support of her favorite part of Salem, the library. Quote, it just felt really important to say, hey, I came here and I'm here to support the library, so just help us with that. End quote. Zoe didn't simply speak at one meeting. During 2024, she spoke 4 more times on the budget. Current mayor of Salem, Oregon, Julie Hoy, was a city councilor at the time. She said, quote, testimony from It Was Zoe, I think, was enough to make me vote yes. It was wonderful. End quote. This will conclude another episode of the Book Fair podcast. Coming this Friday, we will have an interview with Alexandria Sepulveda, Education and Outreach Manager for Magic Theater. If you'd like to stay up to date with the show, you can follow wherever you are currently listening or on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Book Fair Pod. If you'd like to help the Book Fair podcast grow, you can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. You can find links to news sources as well as episodes posted early. Simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.